Between 1692 and 1693, the Salem Witch Trials took place in colonial Massachusetts. 20 persons were put to death after being charged with using witchcraft, the devil's sorcery. The colony eventually acknowledged the trials were flawed and made amends to the families for those who found guilty. Since then, the tale of the trials has come to represent injustice, paranoia, and even today, more than 3 centuries later, it still captures people's imagination. Salem has its problems. Many believing Christians and adherents of other religions held the firm conviction that the devil could provide some persons knowledge as witches, the ability to harm others in exchange for their loyalty several centuries ago. Europe experienced a witchcraft craze from the 1300s through to the end of 1600s. Thousands of alleged witches, mostly women, were put to death. Local factors account for the start of the Salem Witch Trials, which begun just before European mania was come to an end. William and Mary, the English kings at the time, sparked a conflict with France in the American colonies in 1689. King William's War, as it was known to colonists, destroyed parts of upstate New York, Nova Scotia and Quebec, and drove people into Salem Village in the Massachusetts Bay Colony's country of Essex. Salem Town, which was historic Salem, became what is presently Salem. Salem Village is modern-day Denver's Massachusetts. Salem's resources were put under stress by displaced people. The already exiting competition between families with ties to wealth tied to wealth of the Salem poor, and for those who still relied on agriculture, was exacerbated by this. Reverend Samuel Parris, who became Salem Village's first ordained preacher in 1689 and was deprived for his harsh ways and selfish attitude, sparked controversy as well. The Praetorian people thought that all the fighting was the devil's doing. Reverend Parris's niece, Abigail Williams, aged 11, and daughter Elizabeth, aged 9, both began having fits in January 1692. A local doctor attributed the weird behaviour to supernatural forces when the victim shouted, flung objects and made strange noises and twisted themselves into odd positions. Anne Putnam, a 11-year-old girl, also had comparable occurrences. On February 29, the girls accused Tituba, the Parris family slave from the Caribbean, Sarah Good, a homeless beggar, and Sarah Osborne, an elderly penniless woman, of accusing their problems under pressure from the magistrates Jonathan Corwin and John Hawthorne. Begin on March 1, 1692, all 3 ladies were taken before the local magistrates and questioned for many days. Both Osborne and Good asserted their innocence. Tituba acknowledged that the devil came to me and told me to serve him nevertheless. She provided detailed illustrations of black men who asked her to sign his book, as well as black dogs, red cats, yellow birds. She acknowledged that she had signed the book and said that other witches were also out to get the Puritans. The 3 women were all imprisoned. A series of charges ensued over the course of subsequent months after the paranoia had been sown. The accusations against Martha Corey, a devoted churchgoer in Salem Village, deeply worried the locals since, if she could be a witch, anyone could. Even Dorothy Good, a Sarah Good's 4-year-old daughter, was questioned by the magistrates, and her hesitant responses were seen as a confession. When Deputy Governor Thomas Danforth and his assistants showed up at the hearings in April, the questioning began to become more intense. Numerous residents of Salem and other Massachusetts towns were brought in for interrogation. The formation of the Special Court to hear and terminate for the counties of Suffolk, Essex and Middlesex were mandated by Governor William Phips on May 27, 1692. Bridget Bishop, an elderly woman infamous for her proclivity and gossipy tendencies, was the first case brought before the Special Court. Bishop said, "I am as innocent as the infant unborn," in response to the question of whether she had committed witchcraft or not. She must have had a weak case because she was found guilty and was the first person to be hanged on what would eventually become the Gallows Hill on June 10. Respected priest Cotton Mather addressed a letter to the court pleading with them not to accept spectral evidence, testimony regarding dreams and visions 5 days later. This request was mainly disregarded by the court, which resulted in hanging of 5 persons in July, 5 more in August and 8 more in September. Following in his son's footsteps, Harvard President Increase Mather criticized that the use of spectral evidence on October the 3rd by saying, "It would be better if 10 accused witches escaped than one innocent person being executed." In response to Mather's plea and his own wife being investigated for witchcraft, Governor Phipps on October 29 ordered the release of many suspects and abolished the court. In its place, Phipps established the Superior Court of Judicature, which only found guilty 3 out of the 56 defendants and forbade the use of spectral evidence. By May 1693, Phipps had finally released everyone who had been imprisoned on witchcraft-related allegations. However, the harm had already been done. 19 men had been hanged on Gallows Hill, a 70-year-old man had been crushed to death with large stones, other individuals had perished in jail, and almost 200 people had been charged with engaging in the devil's magic. Many parties involved, including Judge Samuel Sewell, publicly admitted their mistakes and culpability after the trials and deaths. The General Court mandated a day for fasting and introspection for the Salem catastrophe on January 14, 1697. The trials were ruled to be illegal by court in 1702. The colony was approached to statute in 1711 that resorted the rights and reputations of those guilty and gave £600 in compensation to their heirs. However, Massachusetts did not formally apologise for the events in 1692 until 1957, more than 250 years later. The Salem Witch Trials continued to captivate both artists and scientists in the 20th century. With his 1953 play, The Crucible, playwright Arthur Miller brought the story back to life by using the trials as an analogy for the McCarthyism hysteria in 1950s. A lot of theories have also been developed to explain the bizarre conduct that took place in Salem in 1692. One of the most specific studies, conducted by psychologist Linda Caporell and published in Science in 1976, attributed the accused's strange behaviour to a fungus ergo, which is present in rye, wheat and other cereal grasses. Eating food infected with this fungus, according to toxicologists, can cause muscle spasms, vomiting, delusions and hallucinations. The fungus also flourishes in warm, humid environments, not too dissimilar to Salem Village's swampy meadows, where rye was a main crop during the spring and summer.